Hey folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier. I had some thoughts on a couple of things going on in the sports world or the pseudo sports world. This is Mike Messier, One Pro Wrestling and Sports Fan channel. Also simulcasting on One Mike Messier, which is my channel for all my movie reviews. For the wrestling fans that used to see my movie reviews on the channel, now you should come on over to One Mike Messier where I do Mike's Instant Movie Reviews. The Dune 2 saga has been interesting there. So let's talk about a couple of things here. Mike Tyson was scheduled to fight Jake Paul, the Logan Paul's brother. I believe Logan's the older brother. Jake is the one that's fought a few fights. I believe his biggest competitive fight was against Tommy Fury, Tyson Fury's younger brother, and I believe Tommy defeated Jake in that fight. So Jake Paul's not even the best fighter, but he's a great talker. Him and his brother are big pop culture shit stirrers. They're able to get people worked up into a frenzy. I watched the highlights from the press conference, and Jake is obviously taking on the heel persona, mentioning Buster Douglas, who defeated Mike Tyson back in 1990. I believe probably before Jake Paul was alive, I'm guessing. Probably before a lot of you fine folks were alive, and that's fine. Mike Tyson, I believe he's 57 years old, and he had an ulcer flare up, which is no joking matter, and the fight was postponed from July until November, and I believe it's Dallas, Texas. A good friend of mine lives out there. My buddy Jamie Reborn lives in Dallas, Arlington area, Texas. So Dallas is always a big fight place. It's a big place for the Dallas Cowboys and other sports. They even support pro hockey in Dallas, but the fight postponed. I really wasn't looking forward to this. I had friends of mine, casual boxing fans, sending me memes, sending me videos, thinking that somehow I would be excited about this. I think sometimes people underestimate me, or they just kind of think that I like, the mainstream ice cream when I don't. I would prefer peppermint stick over vanilla, in other words. So you're not going to entertain me with a Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. I would probably watch as a favor to you fine folks. I would watch it just to shit on it, but I'm not going to get excited about it. First of all, because I respect actual boxing. And in the world of actual boxing, Mike Tyson was not the best of all time. He was not the best of his era. In fact, he lost to Buster Douglas in one of the greatest fights, the greatest upset in sports, boxing, whatever you want to call, whatever you want to say. Buster Douglas, 42-1 underdog, knocked Mike Tyson silly. And then, Mike was never the same. He did have a couple of really good fights with a gentleman named Razor Ruddock. Razor Ruddock was a good fighter, but Tyson did defeat Razor once by an early stoppage. I think in the 7th round, the referee stopped it a little early. It might have been Richard Steele, the referee. And then they had a decision fight, maybe 6 months later. So Tyson had his day, but his day is come and gone. I mean, even after his prison career, after his prison tenure, I should say, he came out. He beat a couple of tomato cans, and then eventually he went up against Evander Holyfield. Holyfield kind of felt like he was robbed of the opportunity to be the first guy to beat Tyson back in 1990. Holyfield was coming off of a loss. People don't remember this, but when Holyfield beat Tyson the first time in the summer of 96, the fight before that, Evander Holyfield lost a stoppage to Riddick Bowe. And so that was the third and final fight of the Bowe Holyfield trilogy. And I'm telling you, folks, at the time when Holyfield lost to Bowe, people thought Evander was done. They thought that, he's getting stopped in 8 rounds. He was not as good as Riddick Bowe, and so they figured he was done. But then he goes out and he knocks out Mike Tyson. And I believe that Holyfield knocked out Tyson in the 10th. It was either the 10th or the 8th, but in any regard, Holyfield beat Tyson. A year later, they have a rematch, and that's the famous ear bite match. And then Tyson was banned from boxing for a year, and this is during that course of the year, March of '98. when Mike Tyson was the special referee for the Steve Austin-Shawn Michaels match at WrestleMania 14, and that's Mick Foley and Mike Tyson in the background there shaking hands at WrestleMania 14, I believe, was when that photo was taken. My point is, these guys, they have more in common than you would think. Mike Tyson and Mick Foley. Let me just keep on going with this Tyson fight. I'm not looking forward to it. I think this is just another money grab. This is just another novelty boxing match. I have so much respect for real boxers. My buddy Vinny Pazienza, the Tasmanian Devil from Rhode Island. Guys like Bernard Hopkins, Sugar Ray Leonard, of course Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Holyfield, and I like Buster Douglas. I still like Buster Douglas for when he beat Tyson back in 1990. I have so much respect for these actual fighters, actual champions. Boxing's a really incredibly tough sport to succeed in. The politics, the gamesmanship, everything about boxing, legitimate boxing, is really tough. And there is a level of corruption in boxing. But what we've seen in the last 10 years or so with these novelty fights, and the Paul brothers have been a big part of that, in my opinion, decline in boxing. Even Tyson Fury having that fight with the MMA champion there, it's just, to me, it's disgraceful. I mean, I just feel like they've degraded their own sport. I think fights, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, their first and third fight in the last 5 or 10 years were great. Their second fight was very one-sided. But I think even Tyson Fury doing that novelty fight, it just degrades the actual lineage title of boxing. And a fight like this, Mike Tyson, 57 years old, against a social media influencer, not even the number one Paul brother, like the number two Paul brother, like he's fighting Jerry Briscoe. To me, it's just demeaning, it's degrading, and the people that get excited about this stuff, they're just marks. I mean, they're just mainstream marks, and they're just, here's your spooning, here's your soup, drink your soup, eat your vitamins. It's just silliness. So the fact that this fight's been postponed, I hope it does take some of the piss out of it. I think we'd be better off without it. I think Tyson, both guys actually have a lot to lose here. I think both of them have more to lose than to gain besides the money. I'm sure whatever money they're getting paid is quite good. But I think as far as reputation, legacy, if Tyson loses, then he lost to some social media punk. And if Jake Paul loses, he loses to, quote, an old man. And I don't think either guy really has much to gain with the victory of the other. If Tyson beats Jake Paul, who did he beat? He beat a social media kid who lost to Tommy Fury. And if Jake Paul beats Tyson, who did he beat? He beat a former champion who's 57 years old. So really, the stakes are incredibly low as far as actual legacy, heritage, whatever you want to call it, integrity. But of course, we're not talking about integrity with this type of thing. This is a novelty. This is a freak show. This is a circus. This is food for the masses. And the Tyson Jake Paul fight does not interest me. Would I watch it? I don't even have Netflix right now, to tell you the truth, but I probably would watch it at the time this fight ever does happen. If it does happen, I think WWE Monday Night Raw will be on Netflix, and there's a lot of good shows on Netflix that I haven't watched. I catch up on Netflix occasionally, so I know they have good programming, but I just don't think it's a good fight. I don't think it's good for boxing, and let's kind of lead into Mick Foley here. Mick Foley, as you see in the photograph of Mike Tyson, this is a photograph from 1998. It was either at WrestleMania 14 in Boston, or the photograph was from the next night, because you see the steel cage, it looks like, in the background. And I know that Mick Foley and Terry Funk wrestled the New Age Outlaws in a steel cage tag team match the next night on Raw. So wherever that photo was taken, this was definitely in 1998. And Mick Foley, I think this one's a tougher topic for me. I have been in the company of Mick Foley, I believe, 3 times in my life. I've seen him perform his stand-up comedy slash spoken word show twice. He did it once with Colt Cabana was actually the opening act, and Colt Cabana was actually funnier than Mick Foley. But Mick Foley is a very nice guy. You know, if you've ever had the opportunity to meet him, he's one of these wrestlers that always seems to be available at a charity event or an autograph signing, or he does his stand-up stuff. Mick Foley is a wrestler that loves wrestling. He loves being himself, and I think to somewhat of his own demise, to be honest with you, because I think Mick Foley, I just watched a couple of videos in preparation for doing my video here, and Mick Foley's talking about his retirement match and the concussions, and he says that he has a dog named Randall after Randy Orton. So he's actually named his pet Randall after Randy Orton. Now, if that's not living inside the bubble of professional wrestling, I don't know what is. I do respect Mick Foley. I do have a fondness for him. But I'm starting to really feel bad and pity for him, which I never wanted to feel. I'm sure he doesn't want my pity or your pity. But we've seen in the last couple of years, it was really evident. WrestleMania, I believe, 39, when I think it was Mick Foley was inducting Stacy Keibler, and Mick Foley came out to introduce her, and Mick was just so big, and not in a good way. I mean, Mick looked like he was about 420 pounds. He's a tall guy. He's 6'4". After all the throws off the Hell in the Cell and all the jumps on the concrete, Mick Foley might have lost an inch or two. But he is a big man. But at 420 pounds, that's 100 pounds too much. I mean, that's 100 pounds, and he'd still be overweight at 320. And look, I'm I'm a big guy too, and I know what it's like to have that struggle with weight. But I've never been up to that mark, to the 400-pound mark. So, I mean, seeing Mick Foley with that suit at WrestleMania 39, it was really tough to watch that. And then we started hearing Mick Foley do the show with Conrad Thompson, the podcast. And Mick was just talking about how he wasn't feeling well. And he was just he was just eating a lot of food. Mick was just eating a lot of... God damn it. Mick Foley was just eating a lot of food, not exercising. I watched these videos today. Mick Foley was going to do a comeback match. He was going to motivate himself to get out of his funk. He was going to have a big death match. He wanted to either wrestle, I believe it was John Moxley or Matt Cardona. He had in mind as a potential opponent. I think those were just the two that he had on his short list, and he wanted to have like a kind of a Ric Flair retirement, like Ric Flair's last match. I think Conrad Thompson was even going to be the promoter of this thing. They mentioned it on the Mick Foley podcast, on the Conrad Thompson podcast, and then pretty soon after, Mick did another 2 months ago. He did a video where he kind of very humbly stated that he had been tested positive for a concussion. He wasn't sure how he got the concussion, but it was in training. And after consulting with his family, and you always know that these guys are kind of hiding something when they throw their family under the bus. Like, they don't want to take full ownership for their own decisions. So they always drag in like a wife or their family, or I consulted with my family. I consulted with my wife. They that's always like the Macho Man Savage putting Elizabeth in front of him, like, because no one's going to insult the guy or attack the guy if he puts his family and his wife in front of him. But I mean, I'm just going to say what I have to say, which is, I wish that Mick Foley could get inspired to lose the weight without having to wrestle a death match. And I mean, it just goes into the magnitude of the sickness of the obsession with wrestling for Mick, that in order for him to get motivated to make himself more comfortable and to lose some weight, he feels that he has to have like some pat on the back or some party of a death match. And why couldn't it just be a normal match? I mean, why does it have to be a death match? And it just seems like guys like Mick Foley, he's walking in the same footsteps that he used to criticize Ric Flair for having, which is these guys are almost destined, or they're almost looking to die in the ring. And I think the same criticism that went to Rick for having his final tag team match, and he ended up passing out a couple times during that match, and he's got the chest piece in his body. I think that's the same thing that Mick was going to put us through and put himself through. And so I think in a way it's good that he's not going to do that death match, but in a way it's sad that he can't. And I just watched another Mick Foley concussion update video. It's on the Mick Foley YouTube channel. You can find it for yourself. But Mick was saying that he had suffered another concussion from riding a roller coaster. So, I mean, I hate to tell you this, folks, but I don't think it's normal to get a concussion from bouncing around on a roller coaster. I mean, obviously his brain, his mind, I hate to say it, but it's been affected in a negative way from all the chair shots. I mean, Mick always likes to put over Prime energy drink or put over the Rock's energy drink, if that's the same thing. But I think The Rock could be held accountable for scrambling Mick's brain. Back at that Royal Rumble 1999, when Mick Foley had his hands handcuffed behind his back, and The Rock took great liberties, and what was it, 11 or 12 or 13 chair shots directly to the head of Mick Foley? I don't see why Mick Foley constantly has to drag out The Rock and say what a great guy The Rock is. This is the guy that scrambled your mind, pal. And, I mean, all the things that Mick Foley did in ECW, I mean, these are great matches, don't get me wrong. Great memories as a fan, but if we had known then what we know now, would we have enjoyed these matches as much? I mean, I don't know. I mean, but if you look at, like, Kevin Sullivan and Mick Foley versus the Nasty Boys, going back to 1994 WCW, and Mick Foley and Max Payne versus the Nasty Boys, or all the times that Mick Foley would take a back body drop or a flying elbow drop onto the concrete, if we had known that we'd be seeing this gentleman still alive in 2024 suffering through these concussions and the weight gain, and I don't know if he's got depression or not, but he doesn't look too good. And then you see things. I mean, one of the videos on Mick Foley's channel is him with his two sons sitting on the couch, and they've got this little dog. I guess that's Randall the dog. And Mick Foley is announcing his plans for this comeback retirement match. So this was, a few months before he canceled the match. And no offense to Mick Foley's family, but I think his family is just one of those families where you have the celebrity dad, and then everybody else in the family tries to get their piece of the fame pie, and none of them really have earned it nor deserve it. No offense to his daughter. His daughter seems to be a real sweetheart, nice girl and everything, and she tried to be a wrestler, but the reality was it just wasn't in her system. Like taking the bumps and being athletic, she was just not up for it. She was not Charlotte Flair. She was not Mercedes Moné or Sasha Banks. Noelle was a very pretty girl, a tall girl. She could probably do some wonderful modeling, which I know she's done. I mean, she had her romance with Frank the Clown, which Mick was not too happy with, the unemployed clown. But, Noelle just did not have, what's the word, propensity? Whatever the fuck. She did not have the affinity to be a wrestler. She could have been a behind-the-scenes an announce person. I mean, she's... just like they had Renee Young, and then they started making duplicates of Renee Young. I mean, I think Noelle Foley could have done that just fine, and I think she did once or twice. I mean, I think a backstage, Mike Holder, she would have done fine with. I don't know what she's up to now. I thought she was having some type of health issue, but I wish Noelle Foley nothing but the best, obviously, but she just wasn't cut out to be the star that she thought she should be. I mean, in a lot of ways, you could say that Brooke Hogan deserved more from the world of pop culture than Noelle Foley. Then you take a look at the two sons. Now, I think Mick Foley had 4 kids, but I can only think of, there was the 2, and there was Kane Dewey. We've all heard of that, and There was a thing with his two sons where I mean I don't want to insult people here, but look, we're already here. One of the sons had some type of autism, some type of slight autism, and the other son didn't. But for me, when you see the two sons on camera together, it's really hard to figure out which son has the slight autism and which one doesn't. And on this video with Mick, when they're talking about the retirement match, I still can't figure it out. I mean, I just think it's one of those deals where the autism or whatever it is, it's either so slight or the fact that that brother has hung out with his brother without that disability his whole life that they've just kind of merged. You know what I mean? Like the slight autism one and then the one that's just a little shy or introverted. They've just been together for so long that it just they come off as very similar. So I can't really decipher which is which. And like I said, I'm not trying to make fun of these guys. One of the two sons, it might have been Dewey, worked for the WWE as a writer for a while, and I think that was during those really bad years for WWE, like 2017 to 2019. And I remember there was times when Mick Foley would criticize the WWE programming while his son worked for the writing team, and I think Mick was trying to kind of knock on the doors of WWE to say, hey, the programming really stinks, and my son is trying to do some better things for you with his ideas, but you guys aren't listening to him. And whatever it was, it might have backfired because I think his son was released from the writing team. In any event, just seeing Mick and just knowing that, just the whole thing is sad, to be quite honest with you. And I mean, I hate to say it, but I will. The fact that he's got to motivate himself to lose that 100+ pounds by having a death match of all things. I'm going to go through a year or two of training to lose all this weight so I can have a death match and put thumbtacks in my back or put a barbed wire baseball bat upside my head or put myself on fire. I mean, this is just indicative that some of these wrestlers, I'm telling you, they have these things where they're not going to be happy until they paralyze themselves, or they're not going to be happy until they die in the ring. And they feel that accepting physical abuse, whether it's Mick Foley or Ric Flair or any number of these guys, like they somehow get off, or they feel good about hurting themselves, like they prove how tough they are, or they prove how much they love wrestling, or how much they love me and you, the wrestling fans, by sacrificing their bodies. It's very warped in a lot of ways. It's very sick and sad, quite honestly. So in a way, I'm glad that Mick Foley is not having that match, but on the other hand, as his fan, I mean, it may not seem like it, but I am a Mick Foley fan. To hear him discuss the injuries and discuss the concussions, and he's getting a concussion by being on a roller coaster. That's not normal. That's not healthy, and it makes me distraught. And I'm hoping for the best for Mick Foley, but I mean, I don't know if he's been in touch with the group up in Boston, the concussion group, the CTE group. I hope he has, for his sake. I kind of have a feeling he probably has been. Who's that wrestler that was with WWE? Chris, whatever the fuck his name is. Nowinski? Was it Chris Nowinski? Who's with the group in Boston about the concussion stuff. So I hope that Mick's getting the help, whatever help he can get. But here's the sad truth, folks. I think once you get to that certain point, taking the dive off the Hell in the Cell, getting conked in the head with the chair by The Rock and everybody else, I mean, is there hope for Mick Foley? And I'm concerned, quite honestly, and I don't mean to insult him or his family. I'm just sharing these thoughts with you. Some of them are not politically correct. Some of them might seem mean-spirited, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying I haven't seen other people talk about this. I'm talking about it. I'm going there. I wish that Mick were to get his help. And I guess here's the final thing to wrap this up, folks. What's with us, society as a whole, that we need to see our heroes get trotted out until they're in the ground? Like, what's wrong with us that we need to see Mike Tyson fight at age 57? And I'm telling you, more people would watch that Mike Tyson Jared Paul match than would watch the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder match, or the, what was it, Usyk or whoever the fuck just beat Tyson Fury a few weeks ago. Like, more people would watch Tyson Fury and Jake Paul than Mike Tyson and Jake Paul than would watch a Tyson Fury match. Is my point. And with Mick Foley, the WWE might not step behind that match, but Conrad Thompson was willing to promote it, and I would watch it, out of respect. And if nothing else, a morbid curiosity, like, is Mick going to survive this thing? Were he to do a death match against Cardona or John Moxley? But what's with us as a society that feels the need to watch our heroes grind themselves into the dirt until there's nothing left? I mean, what's wrong with a nice retirement for these guys? Just go off into the distance. I mean, have you ever heard of the Viking funeral, where they send you off on the raft and then they shoot you? Like with they send a bow and arrow with a fire to blow up the raft. I mean, I think we need to start analyzing ourselves, that we have to trot out our heroes until their mortality is evident. And I think Undertaker dragged us through that, or we dragged him through that, for several years, until finally, with the pandemic, the Undertaker had hopefully his last match, the last ride with AJ Styles. I'm trying to think of other sports stars. I mean, this is nothing new to this generation. Larry Holmes, he lost to Spinks. He seemed like he retired, and then he came back for what was basically thought to be a payoff to fight Mike Tyson. This is Larry Holmes I'm talking about. So then Holmes loses to Tyson, he gets knocked out, and then he makes another comeback, and he fights some more, and eventually he got a shot. You may not remember, but Larry Holmes got a shot against Evander Holyfield, and actually did fairly decent in that fight. George Foreman could be the exception to the rule. He had a big comeback, and of course he eventually got a world title victory over Michael Moore. But I don't know, folks. It's to me that we as a society have to start, allowing these people, or encouraging them, to just go away. How can we miss you if you don't go away, as our buddy Jim Cornette says. So that's it, folks. I don't know. If you had any comments, you could have commented. Nobody commented. Sometimes people comment on Facebook. They comment on Twitter. They don't actually comment on the YouTube channel. And on this occasion, I'm on one Mike Messier, which is my Mike's Instant Movie Reviews. Tonight, I'm scheduled to go see this patriotism U.S. flag movie of sorts, this one-night event. There's also the Stanley Cup playoffs going on. The Boston Celtics are very close to winning a championship. But if you want to see what's going on with me, if you're on one Mike Messier, this is my Mike's Movie Reviews and Life Rants, and where I mostly do movie reviews and life rants. And one Pro Wrestling and Sports Fan is for the pro wrestling and sports. And you might be wondering, well, gee whiz, Mike, what do you do with yourself besides criticizing our heroes? Well, you can go to One Man and a Camera Films and see my films, my short films, my feature-length film, Blood Sugar Sedace. You can see my artwork on One Artist Mike Messier, and whatever. So MikeMessier.com is the hub for all things me. And like I said, I mean no disrespect, especially to Mick Foley. I'm a much bigger Mick Foley fan than a Mike Tyson fan. I just don't wish. I wish these guys didn't have to go to this extreme to gain our approval. That's it.